Good morning. How are you guys? Did you like the dumplings last night? Well, I'm glad. Thank you for coming to see me and Husky.
Welcome, Dumpling. So evidently, as I've already shown bumbling through your impressive track record, there's almost too many things to keep track of already. So in a few words, how would you describe what you've been up to and what you're doing?
So TLDR, I am a trust and community builder. That's the short of it.
What's a trust builder?
It's interesting because one of the people I admire the most is an American designer and great problem solver, Chris Do. He had introduced me to this model of trust building. It has 3 principles, and it applies to every industry. In order to sell your product and your services, you need people to trust you. And people will only trust you if they like you. And they will like you only if they know you. So it's a 3-step process and 3 principles. And I have been applying that to my work in the Cardano ecosystem.
That's interesting. Can you give some examples of how you've applied those principles in your work?
Right, so for the first example, let's take from the really high level, right? Knowing, liking, and trusting. I have built single-handedly a Chinese-speaking community for Cardano by heavily applying the knowing principle. So Cardano does not really have a strong presence in the Chinese-speaking part of the world for a myriad of reasons, one of which is the lack of information and a lot of rumors going on in that particular sector. So I came in, created impartial, consistent informational content for them. And in time, when people get to know the real Cardano, a community starts to build. So that's adopting the principle of getting people to know you. Now, the second principle is getting people to like you. That's when I started the Dumpling spaces, the Twitter spaces. Projects building on Cardano, they want people to like them because they have something to sell. They're building on something. And how do they get people to like them? There needs to be a conversation. That's why I built a platform for a civil yet spicy discourse, so people get to talk to the projects in a 2-way dialogue. And you know what? People will like you if you give them the right answers, or actually the good answers, not the right answers, because good answers don't always have to be right. Now finally is the trusting principle. And I want to clarify here by saying trust is not a final destination. Trust is a process. I think many projects would think we will do something, we gain the trust, and we can start selling. And I think that's a misconception. Trust is the start of a new cycle. Then you start again by getting more people to know you, by getting more people to like you. And you execute on the feedback that you got from the conversations. You improve on your offerings, on your communications, on your marketing. And you gain more trust, and this whole thing snowballs. And I adopt the final principle to my work in helping projects and development teams on Cardano by guiding them through the first 2 steps, and then gaining the trust and executing on the plan.
It sounds well and good, but I'm just a degenerate coffee cup. Can you dive into some of the details of how you've applied the principles? So getting people to know you, get to know the project you're working on. How exactly did you apply that when you engage with the problems with the Chinese-speaking community? Or maybe rather, what were the problems that you saw in regards to Cardano's presence in the Chinese-speaking community?
That was a really big problem back then because Cardano did not have a presence there. And I would say it's very small, and the existing presence was not a good one. We already know, even in the English-speaking side of Cardano, the media was not reporting it fairly. And it got even worse in the Chinese side, a lot of rumors and FUD going on. So I wanted to solve that by showing people the real Cardano. Cardano is out there, and here's the truth about Cardano. So I started by creating impartial and consistent Cardano content. Okay, you say Cardano is vaporware and ghost chain. I'm going to talk every week about the projects building on Cardano. And you think ADA has too much supply and then token burn, I'm going to present you with the facts. And you will notice over time, when you're consistent and you're impartial, people start to gather around you. They start to ask questions, talk to you. And these people will become micro-ambassadors for you. And that's how the Chinese community started to grow.
Why go the impartial way?
Because that's the only way to do it.
The only way?
Right, I guess you can argue, right? There are projects in other chains and other products using shilling, cherry picking, seeing whatever favors their project, and they can succeed. But when we're looking at success, I think we need to look at two scopes. Number one is the scale of their success, and number two is the longevity. And I would argue the longevity is more important. So take, for example, what happened with Luna and Celsius. Were they successful? Yes. Is it large scale? Also yes. But did it last? No. And I want the success for Cardano to be long lasting. Also very important for me is my mission is not to sell Cardano. I believe in Cardano. I want people to know it for what it is, not for what I want people to believe what it is. And that's why I don't add my judgment. I don't try to regulate or manipulate what people think. And when projects try to sell, try to shill, they're having this the other way around. They're asking people to give them trust. They're asking, and taking and taking and taking, but they're not giving. So actually what you need to do is start from the top, getting it out there, knowing you exist, and then getting people to like you, and then is the trust, not the other way around.
All right, so on the path to that trust, you said the second principle moving towards that is getting people to like you, getting them to like your product and what you're working on. What are some of I mean, that sounds simple enough as a goal that you want to have, but how did you manage to help projects achieve that with your dumpling spaces and the dumpling dungeon on Twitter?
Right, so the challenge back then was that as a project, what kind of channels do you have? You can set up YouTube interviews with some influencers with predetermined questions and scripted answers, mostly what you want to say, mostly what you want people to hear. And that's one way of communication. And when people want to talk to you more, what do? They go to your Telegram, they go to your Discord. Fine, you can have a few back and forth. When they want in-depth conversation, what can they do? If they're lucky, they get to schedule a call with you. What about all the other guys who want to talk to you? What if they want to ask difficult questions, follow-up questions? There's just no channel for that. And that's why I created this space where I moderate the space for people to ask in-depth, difficult questions, where the projects would benefit by getting constructive feedback and even criticism. Right? Some people might argue maybe it's in the project's best interest to be presented in a way that they sound very smart and have everything figured out. But I can tell you, and I think many of you have come to my Twitter spaces, you witness that's not the case. For instance, there are some projects with really big budget for marketing. They have gained a lot of followers in a very short amount of time. But when they come to my Twitter spaces, we ask them difficult questions, and they don't behave in a way that's genuine, that's organic. They lost part of the trust. On the contrary, there are some really small Cardano projects who have no hype, who have no marketing budget. They come to the space, they took some difficult questions, and even if they don't have the right answer, they give good answers. For example, we don't know. We're still figuring it out. Can the community help us in this way? And the result is these guys gain a lot more genuine followers. I get DMs all the time saying, that's a really good project, even though they're really small. And the projects get comments about, hey, can I help you guys in this way? So that works. This two-way conversation works in terms of getting people to like you. And this like is very different from the like that you got from paying hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars in marketing.
All right, so you put yourself out there to know them. You have a discourse to make them like you. How do you tie that with the crescendo, earning the trust of that community?
Right. So the two first principles are good, right? Getting it out there and then getting people to like you. But you can't just stop there because that's where you actually start the real work. Then you would have gotten some feedback about your product, about your offering, about your communication style. That's where the real work starts. You need to improve on your offering and everything that you're doing according to the feedback that you got. And that's what I do in terms of helping the projects. I help them walk them through the first two steps, and when we come to the last, the trusting stage is actually where the new cycle starts. You take the feedback in, you start to do the work to improve, you communicate your improvements, you get more trust, you get more feedback, you get more community following. The whole thing just snowballs, and you become a trustworthy project. So I think the point I'm trying to make is trust is not a destination. Trust is a new beginning, and you need to repeat that cycle if you want to be ever growing. That's my observation of the successful projects.
It sounds simple enough in theory, but probably hard in practice. How are you finding the projects that you're helping going this way? Do they find that they're struggling with it, or is it like a Columbus task? As soon as you just tell them America is west, you just got to sail until you hit the coast and it's smooth sailing?
Principles are always easy. It's the application and the nuance and the difficult times that you're powering through, right? Everybody knows smoking is bad for you, but people still smoke. Everybody knows to build trust, you need to be asked difficult questions, do improvements. But it's the implementation that's difficult. And that's where I come in. You know, I'm very spicy. I don't bullshit you. I don't waffle. And I just set the course straight. And I'm always there to help. I think having that kind of mindset, the grit, is very important.
I think that makes perfect sense. Well, thank you for coming and sharing your recipe for success. I hope you're taking notes out there. I do have another question, if you don't mind me changing the topic a little bit. I remember reading a couple months ago that you're speaking on a panel in, I believe it was Westminster, London, with representatives from Vodafone, HSBC, United Nations. That sounds very interesting. Can you tell all of us, what was that about?
Yes, I was really honored and happy to join the panel of those bigwigs to talk about blockchain fundamentals and how different entities and institutions can use blockchain to their own benefit. I came in as one of the only representatives from the actual crypto community. So you can imagine it's really interesting. It's a different type of language that I would have to use listening and talking to these people.
Was there any spicy takeaways from speaking with the big dogs?
This is going to upset a lot of people here and in Cardano. My biggest takeaway is those bigwigs, they don't know, and they don't care about Cardano, most of them. That's what I learned. That's the state of the matter currently.
Why do you think that is? What did they tell you?
I mean, you can deduce, right? How can someone care about you if they don't know about you? They don't know about what you can do for them. And I think that's the challenge we're having in the Cardano ecosystem as a whole. And I was actually talking to Patrick Tobler yesterday. He's one of the people I respect the most in the Cardano ecosystem, not only because of the things he has built, but the mindset he has. We see eye to eye on this principle. For example, many Cardano projects, they are competing against each other for that existing small slice of the pie. But what we really need to do to succeed is to together cook a bigger piece of the pie. And that's what he is doing, being onboarded to Microsoft and getting other big companies, Web2 companies or real life companies on board to Cardano. And that's my vision. That's where I want to do next. I have implemented this model of onboarding people, getting them to trust within the Cardano community and the Chinese community. Now I want to adopt this to a larger scale to help Cardano together build a bigger piece of the pie by bringing these big wigs, these companies who don't know Cardano exists. So I'm going to use the same model, impartially talk about what Cardano can do, getting them to know we exist, and then getting them to like us by allowing them to ask us difficult questions, having this two-way dialogue instead of trying to sell anything from Cardano, and finally gaining some trust. That's my vision in the long term. And that's why I'm going to these events and getting interviewed by those magazines, publications that are targeted at the institutional level with real companies, Web2 companies.
Wow. Well, that certainly sounds like an enormous challenge to take on. But I think if anybody can do that, you're definitely my top contender for it.
Thank you.
Is there anything that any of us can do to help you making this bigger pie for Cardano?
Yes. So just like how you helped me by voting for me in Project Catalyst and by getting the dumplings last night in the catering, I needed help from Cardano projects. The projects that are solving real-world problems for our potential Web2 onboarded guests to the Cardano ecosystem. So if you're building that kind of products, you have some great ideas, come talk to me. And let's build Cardano. Let's make a bigger piece of the pie together.
I think that's a good place to end the speech on. Thank you so much for coming, Dumpling.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I think we got rocked by Husky. He promised to come on stage and take picture, but it's very on brand. Have you seen his booth? It's really flimsy. I actually helped him by telling him, don't get a high quality booth, you're Husky, get it from Alibaba, and he did. So if it claps later, let's take pictures, because that would be on brand for Husky. Successfully rugged. Thank you, Lead Time. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.